So dudes, it's your boy Tuhu. Y'all have seen the Wuwa anniversary drama already, I'm assuming, and now that it's been a couple days and we've gotten a response from Kuro about the situation, and I think they're not going to address it a second time, now's a good time for me to get my own take out there on everything that's gone down. If you're not familiar with me or my content, my name is ToeSniper98, but you can just call me Tuhu, and I am the god of gacha games. I currently main and keep it with 13 different gacha games all at once, as you can see by this clip here. Just add Magia etc. and it'll be updated. Obviously for this video, the gacha that's most relevant here is Wuthering Waves, which I've played since launch last year and have played every day since then. I consider it a top 3 gacha in my gacha roster, as I've shown in a tier list video that I made not too long ago, where I ranked all the gachas that I play in terms of how good they are as far as gacha games go. If you've been living under a rock over the weekend and you don't know what all the drama is about regarding Wuwa's first anniversary, the TLDR is that a lot of Wuwa players out there were pretty unhappy with the first anniversary rewards as they were announced on the first anniversary livestream. Specifically, that the rewards weren't good enough. What a surprise. This was one of the rare occasions, as far as I'm aware, that both the Chinese and the Western players for a big gacha actually agreed on something, since both of these communities were not happy with what Kuro showed for their first Annie. Apparently the Japanese player base were the ones defending Kuro this time on Twitter, which is kind of funny if you think about it. As a result of this backlash, though, let's be honest, it was mainly because of the Chinese players complaining, Kuro did announce additional rewards recently as damage control, though whether or not this will be enough to calm the players down, I'm not sure yet, at least not at the time of this video recording. So in light of this, where do I, the god of gacha, stand on this situation? Am I shilling for Kuro here, saying that they did nothing wrong and all this anniversary backlash was undeserved, or am I part of the proletariat demanding for more freebies? Well, this might surprise some of you actually, especially those of you who've watched my last few delusional gacha takes videos on my channel, but I'm pretty neutral about all this, to be honest. If anything, I'm actually fairly surprised, in a good way, actually, since I wasn't expecting my Wuwa waifu, Changli, to be getting a skin, and a summer skin no less, and of course the Edge Runners collab, which came out of nowhere. Other than that though, I think what Kuro announced for their anniversary was pretty par for the course, and I didn't have that high of expectations for them to begin with here, but hey, I ain't gonna lie, the players crashing out and roasting Kuro into giving us more pulls? I'll take it. I'm gonna divide this video up into 2 halves. Here, I'll explain why I didn't think the first anniversary stuff was that big of a deal, and in the second half, I'll explain why I think everyone else did, and why I think this drama, or something like it, was always gonna happen eventually. It's safe to assume that given the rivalry, or as I would call it, the tribalism, between the Hoyo and Kuro fandoms, most people's primary comparison point here was with Honkai Star Rail's second anniversary, which was just a couple weeks ago, and so it happened just before Wuwa's first anniversary. So going into Wuwa's Annie, Star Rail's anniversary rewards and content were fresh on people's minds. And of course, how could we forget about the hilarious global account passive drama, if you can even call it that, that came with Star Rail's second Annie that had idiots like Gotcha Smack, Saint Tontus, and Tectone crashing the out and pretending like their crash outs had any meaning to begin with. But I didn't do that. I didn't compare Wuwa's first Annie to Star Rail's second Annie because I think that's an objectively unfair comparison to begin with. The far better comparison, and the one I used as my own primary reference point to judge Wuwa's, first anniversary, was to the first anniversary of another big gacha. But it wasn't Star Rail, mind you, it was Genshin Impact. This might upset some people listening to this, so trigger warning for those of you Wuwa glazers out there, but Wuthering Waves is undoubtedly inspired by and based on Genshin. Both of these games are open-world, exploration-based action RPG gacha games, so it's not Star Rail that Wuwa's trying to compete with here, but rather with Genshin. Something that many Wuwa glazers seem to fail to understand, since their blind animosity towards Hoyo makes them see any Hoyo game as the game to beat, in their endless crusade of one-upmanship. And compared to Genshin's first anniversary, Wuwa's first Annie seems like pure heaven, man. Then again, it's not exactly difficult to beat Genshin's first anniversary when miHoYo basically did nothing. Besides, if you've played gacha games for long enough, you'd know that you don't just assume that you'll get a free 5-star character or other insane rewards like that. I mean, gacha games don't do anniversary events because they're a charity. They do it because they're a business. They want to make some damn cash out of this. And I don't say that to like defend Kuro or any other gacha studio for that matter. I say it because that's how it is. That's why gachas make a big deal out of anniversary events and other events like it, because it is the perfect opportunity to make a lot of money off the hype surrounding anniversary and other events like it. Unless you're Genshin Impact, I guess, but even Genshin's been slowly but surely improving their own anniversaries, if you can even call it an improvement. But I mean, hey, for those of you WoW players out there who were expecting Kuro to drop you a free 5-star with this first anniversary, hey, what can I say? You can find it over in Genshin if you really want it that bad. And since I know some of y'all will bring this up, I'm well aware of how generous WoW was, or still is perhaps. Stuff like the free 5-star character selector that we got last year, the free 5-star perma weapon selector, the guaranteed rate ups on weapon banners, and even that free Shangli Yao copy we got last year too. But let me ask you, are these things truly examples of Kuro's generosity? Actually, Shangli Yao, the free copy of Shangli Yao we got last year, is actually generous. They didn't need to do that. But what about the others? The free 5-star character selector ticket, or whatever that was, that we got last year, we got that as an apology for how subpar WoW's launch was back in 1.0, not as a reward or a freebie. The free 5-star perma weapon selector is actually pretty nice. Kuro didn't need to include that as part of your early game progression rewards, but they did anyway. But if we're gonna talk 5-star weapons, the price that we as WoW players pay for not only that free 5-star perma weapon selector thing, but also for the guaranteed weapon rate up in gacha, is the fact that most of our non-5-star weapon options in-game either don't feel great, or they're just straight up trash, at least compared to the Hoyo games. In my opinion, Kuro giving you a guaranteed weapon rate up in gacha is not them being generous or anything, it's them trying to push you into spending money on a limited weapon. So in this sense, even the free 5-star weapon that I was talking about earlier, I could argue isn't Kuro being like truly generous, but rather something that they should do to throw players a bone. And even then you could interpret this as Kuro giving players like a taste of how much stronger 5-star weapons are over everything else in the game, and so they're like trying to nudge players into rolling for more 5-star weapons to make the game easier for themselves. I mean, just look at String Master. I'll even throw in those free multis that Kuro gives us every patch. Technically, those are even worse than the free multis we get in Star Rail and Zenless, because at least in those games, we get a full limited banner multi, as opposed to Kuro's half and half, like they're drinking some Arnold Palmer Arizona tea. And while I myself was comparing WoW to games that aren't Genshin right now, which is what I criticized other people for earlier in this video, hey, in this case, the overall generosity of a gacha game goes far beyond just their anniversary, and besides, I bet most of you were comparing WoW's first anniversary to Star Rail's second annie anyway. Also, over the course of the last year, I've noticed that it's gotten progressively harder and harder for me personally to roll for a copy of both the limited character and their signature weapon. Up until like Phoebe's banner, I want to say, I had no trouble getting Astrites, enough Astrites anyway, to secure them both every patch, between grinding for gems in-game and getting them from like the Battle Pass and the Monthly Pass because I pay for both of them. But starting with Phoebe, I've been finding myself scraping it very close with getting characters and their signatures by the end of their respective patch cycles. And I don't think my luck has changed drastically or like that much in WoW. I even had to start buying those like $10 and $30 bundles in shop because without them I wouldn't have even had a chance to get everything I wanted, most notably Brant, whose signature I barely managed to roll in like the last few days before his banner rotated out. I even bought them again, actually, this time around when they got refreshed with Shorekeeper's rerun, just because I felt like I need them going into Anniversary Patch when I roll for Zanny and Green Astra with elf ears and a gun. Oh, and also, why do WoW's limited weapon banners take a whole separate currency anyway? Hoyo doesn't do that. You can roll for both limited characters and weapons with the same kind of tickets in their games. Sure, 75-25 rate ups suck ass, I agree, but at least in the Hoyo games, they don't put as much pressure on you to roll for the 5-star weapons to begin with, so if you really want to burn your gems going into their weapon banners, that's on you for the most part. Sure, Star Rail is the obvious exception here, but hey, I was able to beat MOC 12 with an E0 S0 Aglaya without the Bird Boy, mind you, so hey, what can I say except skill issue? All this to say, Kuro, especially after Arena Sita came out, never felt that generous to me. And the more I look back and the more I think about how the game's been like, the less generous I feel like WoWa has been, especially over time. And those are the reasons why I see WoWa's first anniversary the way I do. Kuro, this time around, didn't have anything to, like, apologize for, because compared to last year, when they were going through some shit, right? For the past few months, or even longer, depending on who you ask, they've been riding that social media gravy train that their players, their glazers, if you will, were pushing along. And so they didn't feel the need to, like, give us another free 5-star or anything like that. That, and Wu was competing with Genshin. So that's what you have to compare it to, in terms of, like, anniversary rewards and content, not to Star Rail. And Kuro was never as generous as a lot of its players made it out to be. Actually, I'll be honest, I was surprised this even became a drama to begin with. In quite a few of my recent videos and on stream lately, I've been talking some mad shit on a handful of other gacha content creators. People who just shill the f out of Wuwa and Kuro. So, no thanks to them, I'll admit, I had this impression that people were just gonna glaze the game into the atmosphere like they usually do as of late, and use anniversary news as just more ammo to keep pushing their Wuwa #1 agenda. However, while I myself did not expect much out of Kuro here, obviously a lot of other people did, including a lot of those glazers even. And even if I think comparing Wuwa's first Annie to Star Rail's second Annie is not a fair comparison, clearly that didn't stop people from doing it anyway. Besides, recency bias is obviously a thing, so do I necessarily blame people for reacting the way they did over the weekend? Also, no. But then again, they should have known better. Gacha players will be gacha players. At least the ones who've only ever played the big ones, that is. They can jump games, they can change their allegiances to different companies, but at the end of the day, they'll always be the same. Like, I laughed my ass off at them 5 years ago when they burned through all of Genshin's content in a month and complained about the lack of content on Twitter, and now I get to enjoy them roast Kuro too. Some things never change. Now for the second half of this video, why I thought this first anniversary drama or something like it was always going to happen to Wuwa at some point. The reason is very simple. People have been gassing up Wuwa like it's the second coming of Christ for gacha games or something. The sheer amount of glaze I've been seeing recently for Wuwa is hilarious, man. Almost impressive if I didn't know any better. Like, I thought I was used to, like, people glazing Hoyo games, for example. Boy, oh boy, was I not prepared for people to suck Kuro's dick this much. I mean, what can I say? Bitches do love some nice BBCs after all. A lot of Wuwa players are ex-Hoyo players who came over from Genshin and or Star Rail because they became disillusioned with what Hoyo was doing with their games. Technically, the first migration wasn't even to Wuwa, it was when Genshin players jumped ship from Genshin to Star Rail when that game came out 2 years ago. That's how we got the whole Genshin could never meme in the first place, if y'all remember that still. But Star Rail is still a Hoyo game at the end of the day, so even though it was an alternative to Genshin at the time it came out, it's still by the same company, so obviously a lot of things were gonna be familiar between those two. And before Wuwa, your only other, like, big gacha option was Tower of Fantasy. So when Wuwa did come out, it was like, damn, finally, after all these years, we actually have a halfway worthy competitor to Genshin Impact. Only took 4 years, though to be fair, given Wuwa's 1.0 launch, probably should have taken 5. Either way, though, we now finally have another big production gacha game that's on a similar scale and level of production quality as Genshin in Wuthering Waves, and it's different enough to provide a meaningful alternative. And at the very least, it ain't Hoyo. So it's no surprise at all, actually, that people flocked over to Wuwa like they did. 4 years being stuck with just Hoyo games because Genshin and Star Rail were the only 2 gacha games they knew about, assuming they were even aware that they're playing gacha games to begin with. And now they finally have something else to play that doesn't involve MiHoYo somehow. Unless you consider the fact that Kuro Game was founded by a couple of ex-MiHoYo employees. And at that point, all Kuro needed to do was be just a little bit better than Hoyo. Make their game a little bit more generous than Genshin, or at least make it seem that way. And people would fall head over heels for them and their game. Even if they did make mistakes like they did at launch, all they needed to do was acknowledge them and compensate their players with something, anything. right? And that would already make them better than Hoyo in the eyes of their players, because Hoyo didn't do jack shit for the most part. And that's exactly what Kuro did, as far as I can tell. They designed Wuwa to be incrementally better than Genshin in many ways, and whatever shortcomings they had, such as their subpar launch last year, they responded fairly quickly with stuff like the free 5-star character selector that I mentioned earlier. Intentionally or not, they established a reputation for listening to their players and their feedback. This, paired with them constantly improving their game post-launch with regular quality life updates, better looking regions, and new characters that people are getting more and more hyped for, was what got more and more people hopping on that Kuro train down to hell. Because to these people, the glazers as I would call them, Kuro is, or maybe was, everything MiHoYo wasn't. In other words, a lot of Wuwa players out there put Kuro up on a pedestal when they shouldn't have, simply because they've been blinded by their pure hatred of Hoyo games. Some Wuwa content creators out there would go so far as to call this trauma. I think they're being too dramatic about that, but that's a conversation for a different video. Another delusional gacha takes video, maybe. But anyways, to me, Wuwa was definitely getting artificially elevated to a position that it didn't deserve to be in, whether you take that in a good or a bad way. And it was getting so gassed up, especially in the last couple months here from what I could tell, that as soon as it makes a big enough mistake like this, something like this would happen. A drama like this would unfold. I just didn't expect it to happen for this anniversary, but like I said earlier, I figured it would happen at some point. And the reason why I would make that claim is that pretty soon, Genshin, Star Rail 2, if that's what you like to compare Wuwa to, these games are no longer going to be the only gacha games that Wuwa is going to have to compete with. Kuro obviously isn't the only studio out there who decided to start working on their own Genshin killer games too, if you're stupid enough to use that term unironically. Enfield is gonna probably launch sometime this year. Azure Parmelia just dropped a new trailer, and the MC in that game makes the Rover Shorekeeper ship look canon. Tower of Fantasy might not be doing so hot right now, but hey, Hot Studio is gonna try again with NTE this time. NetEase is scheming to take over the West again like they did with Marvel Rivals, only this time they got Ananta locked and loaded and waiting for the right time to pull the trigger, along with God knows how many other gacha games that are out there right now that are still in development and waiting to make a name for themselves too. And all that would need to happen for Wuwa to see drama like what happened last weekend is for them to make a big enough mistake after another gacha comes out and becomes popular enough and does or announces something really cool. Even worse, if that gacha also develops its own cult of fanatics on social media, just like Wuwa, and that game announces, again, something really cool right before a major event in Wuwa, so Wuwa players also have those really high expectations for their own game because they don't want their own game to lose to that new one, right, to the new kid in town, only for Kuro to drop the ball hard. That might sound really f***ing stupid, but hey, that's exactly what gacha tribalism is. F***ing stupid. Even if I don't have a lot of it, my hope is that this whole first Annie drama with Wuwa will teach the Wuwa glazers that nothing is sacred. Your favorite gacha, no matter how much you glaze it, is never immune to doing things that you might not like. And I speak from experience. My all-time favorite gacha game is the first one I ever picked up, Fate Grand Order, or FGO for short. And holy f***, the servant coin system in that game is so f***ing retarded. Matter of fact, allow me to take this one step further. Unironically glazing a gacha game, actually any game for that matter, but in our case a gacha, does nothing good for that game. Most people understand that talking trash on a gacha usually doesn't help anyone, but excessively glazing one doesn't either. Blowjobs are better than no job? Not always, especially if they suck at it. And judging by how a lot of Wuwa glazers were acting out there before this drama went down, you know for a damn fact that they used teeth instead of tongue. Anyway, again, for Wuwa's own sake, I'm hoping that this incident will show people that they should not have such lofty opinions for their favorite gacha games. And to a certain extent, I'm also hoping that this also shows how f***ing idiotic all this gacha tribalism on social media really is, though for obvious reasons, I don't expect that second part to happen anytime soon, with the internet being what it is. The players who can call themselves genuine fans, the real fans of a gacha, are the ones who can see what's good and bad about it and are willing to discuss them in a way that doesn't involve talking a whole bunch of shit on another. Something that's obviously physically impossible for glazers to do now, isn't it? And God knows Wuwa could sure use a few more real fans right now instead of those fake-ass losers who think they are, at least before first anniversary dropped. You might say, well, if people didn't complain, then we wouldn't have gotten those new rewards, right? Those 30 new polls or whatever that they promised on Twitter. And to that I say, hey, I didn't have to rip my own hair out over all this and become the Asian tectone or some shit like the rest of you did, so hey, thanks for the free polls, bitch. And besides, a lot of people out there, not everyone, mind you, but I'm sure a lot of them, whining about all this first Annie stuff, aren't complaining because they actually care about the game or whatever. Either they just want free shit and that's it, or they're a glazer, and Kuro not being as generous as they hoped doesn't line up with the distorted perception they have of their favorite developers that they have in their heads or whatever, or their anti-Hoyo propaganda where Wuwa is supposed to do everything better than any of the Hoyo games, and so they can't stand having their bubble popped like that by the same people who made their favorite gacha game in the first place, no less. Also, Kuro decided to play nice this time and gave free pulls to get y'all to shut the hell up. And I don't know how many people noticed, but those free pulls, the limited character multi, the limited weapon multi, and the standard banner multi, those were the exact same free pulls we got last year as part of the Gifts of Gratitude login event back in 1.1, so they're just pulling the exact same shit here too. And here's the thing, what if something like this happens again, the drama that is, and next time Kuro decides to not do anything? Right, to not give out anything extra as like compensation or whatever, or as an apology or whatever. What will you do then when you realize that Kuro has slowly turned into the very same company that you hate, right? Whose games you dropped for the exact same or similar reasons? I'm not saying it will, but given that I feel like Wuwa's been getting less and less generous over time, and we've had all this, first anniversary drama go down over the weekend, the chances of Kuro not responding, especially with Tencent owning their asses now, certainly aren't zero anymore. Hey, remember, Kuro was made by Ex-Hoyo devs, so if you want to think of it this way, y'all stopped f***ing around with the mom to around with their daughter instead, and now you got the whole, surprised Pikachu face on when you realize that now they're kind of acting the same way. And to think that there are some retards out there who think that I'm the delusional one. Nah, bruh. You can take your pathetic Uno reverse card and shove it up your ass. But for everyone else out there who isn't just a brain-dead glazer and actually does care about Wuwa as a gacha, as long as Kuro doesn't, do anything else to make the situation worse, and they've already promised to give us more pulls, so we probably don't need to worry about that, I think the game will be fine. In a month or so, I predict that people will go back to the usual, glazing the game like they usually have before this drama went down. I mean, look at Saint Tontus, he's following that script to a T now, isn't he? Like the good little dick sucker that he is. All this drama realistically, is just a speed bump in Wuwa's development, but clearly, it was a pretty big speed bump, arguably the biggest one that the game's experienced since launch, and one that people may not easily forget. After all, a lot of them left Genshin and Hoyo in general because of similar reasons. So I do think that Kuro has to be extra careful in the future now to walk the tightrope between, satisfying their player base and then satisfying Tencent, because again, they own a big portion of Kuro and Wuthering Waves in general. Over 50% from what I remember my chat telling me, actually. And when I say player base, I specifically mean the Chinese players, because what makes you think Chinese gacha companies listen to anyone else? Me, on the other hand, as long as I can pick up Zanny, Siachana, or however you say her name, and both the summer skins, I'm good. The Edgerunners collab is intriguing, certainly, and not what I expected, so the novelty of it makes it pretty interesting, but kind of like the UBW collab in Star Rail, it's probably going to take a whole year before we see anything else from it, but hey, at least now we can expect Wuwa to get more collabs like this in the future, unlike some other gachas. So to answer the question that's in the title of this video, did we deserve more out of Wuwa's first anniversary? Sure, why not? I mean, no one's going to say no to another free 5-star character, obviously. But me personally, I'm not about to hold my breath over something like that anytime soon, like I'm some kind of delusional twat, unlike a lot of other people, apparently. And that will do it for this video. If you enjoyed listening to me talk gacha, make sure to like the video and subscribe. I've got a lot more where that came from, and then some. Check out my socials down in the description below, and if you really enjoy the content, consider supporting me on Patreon. I stream to both YouTube and Twitch, because I dual stream, so stop by for a stream if you want to hang out and watch the God of God in action. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.